And we are live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Forever Sports. And it is a day later since we announced the team to play against Japan on Saturday. And it's been very interesting to see the reaction, and generally a very positive reaction with regards to the side that's been picked, some of the experiments that have been had, for example, lots of questions. And one of the big things that's what we're going to chat about today is how much can we read into this team with regards to what we're going to pick next week. And it's going to be an interesting sort of real exercise to, I think, basically kind of look at this team and kind of see how much of this team is players who need game time, for example, players being given an opportunity, like a Zachary Porthen, for example, maybe like a Franco Mostert, versus how much is this genuinely looking at potential options for France next week and potentially Ireland in a few weeks' time, and how much are we going to see the selection change throughout the alternation series, which I suppose technically this match actually isn't part of. And it's not to try and sort of disrespect Japan or anything like that. And obviously you don't want to take them too lightly and kind of disregard them. But we all, if you're going to be brutally honest, all our focus is really on that France and Ireland game. And I think, to be honest, even if we were to like lose to like a Wales, which is quite a weird one, I would far rather beat France and Ireland and potentially lose to Wales. Personally, I think those are much bigger statement victories. If you drop a game here, maybe you rotate a team, for example, and you just don't pitch up, that happens, and it can happen. And I mean, it shouldn't really happen, but it can happen. But I think that we all kind of seem in agreement with regards to those two matches, Ireland versus France. Those are the biggies. Those are the ones that we are targeting, because that's where we are basically sort of vying and continuously having the debate about the best team in the world, for example, who's the favorites of 2027. And recently, those are sort of teams, especially Ireland, for example, that have beaten us quite regularly. Whereas, France haven't beat us in a while, to be fair. But yeah, so in terms of the side, and I'll start a poll here, and my poll is going to be how many changes will we see versus France? My options are going to be 1, 2, 3, 3 to 6, 6 to 9, or 10 plus changes. Basically, 2 to 23. That's kind of where I'm asking you. How many different players, for example, do you think are we going to see coming in to the side for that game against France next week? Is this going to be a case of more or less much of the same, for example? Are we going to potentially see, just small tweaks, or are we going to see, for example, what we saw against New Zealand in Wellington? Are we going to see Andre Estes next to Kenny Moody in the centres? Are we going to see an Edel van der Merwe released on the wing? David Willemse back at full back? Could we see Mine Ebok start? Could we see Grant Williams start? Are we going to see come back? Peter Steph, the toy expected to come back. So there are definitely lots of ways that this team can change a lot for next week. Whether it does, for example, I suppose time will tell, really. And that, I think, is going to be obviously the interesting part. And a lot of that might even depend on the performance this week with regards to if we don't play well, is that being put down to being a bit rusty, for example, or is that a cause for concern? And do we need to then potentially look at other options for next week? So there's a lot of different things that we're going to be looking at on Saturday. And obviously two very different teams as well. Japan is lightweight, but quick. They play a very quick tempo. They really try to run you off your feet. They're backing their skill set. They're backing their awareness of space. They're backing their ability to create gaps. France, traditionally in the last sort of 5 to 10 years, have been a big side, a massive mammoth pack that they try to really exploit you at set piece, for example. They grind you down by just simply, being overbearing. And then they've got some tremendous players like a Biabare, for example, who if you give them half a gap. So they basically just sort of suck you in, but with, carry by carry by carry, as well as kicking game, where they basically say, you guys have the ball, we'll defend. But we're going to smash you up, for example, and we're going to grind you down, and then we're going to kick penalties, and we're going to grind you down, and sort of win it towards the end. That's a lot of the way that France has played under Fabien Galtier, and I'm interested to see how that potentially changes. next week. In the next few years, we obviously got quite a few players who are injured for France, so it's not anywhere near their full strength side. Obviously, also a few injuries for the Box. You always have injuries. That is one of those things you don't really get away from. But yeah. Apologies for that. Apparently, there's an issue with the mic, which makes zero sense. Let's hope that sorted it out. It seems to be looking okay on my side. Let's hope that is hopefully sorted. But yeah, so I think if we look at the side, we're looking at the obvious changes, for example, from this week to next week are Thomas Toy probably comes in at 3 from based on what we've been seeing over the last sort of few months. So that's 1. I think Eben Etzebeth comes in at 4. That's 2. I think Ronald Kerr probably comes in at 5. That's 3. Then I think Peter Steph Toy starts at 7. That's 4. I personally do think that we're going to see Kobus Reinhardt versus and Sasha Famigomazulu. They have been our best halfback pairing so far this year. So I think that probably stays. I do think that if Damon Williams is fit, he goes to 15. So that's 5 changes. I think Cheslin Collier probably goes into the wing. I think Ethan Hooker might be unlucky to miss out, but he could very well miss out, given that Kurt Lawrence is back. Damien Delendi, Jesse Creel. Will we see Andre Esterhuizen start? So I'm going probably 5 changes in the starting lineup. For me, probably 5, assuming everyone's fit. On the bench, I think that I don't think we'll see that much change in the bench. So I'm currently leaning towards more sort of 3 to 6 changes. That's kind of where I'm at. And that's what's leading, to be fair. So I think that this is actually quite a close team, or match day 23 rather, to what we might see next week. I don't think it's as far away as what you'd initially expect when we thought about the team we'd see against Japan. I think a lot of people obviously thought that we'd see a very rotated side against Japan, for example. It is somewhat a rotated side. There's no doubt about that. But there's still a big core of players who have been playing regularly and players who I think are still close to our Verticom's best team. The other thing I wanted to chat about now that we've sort of got a few people in is the fact that we're looking for our 2 members today. Ideally, I'd like to get 3 during these days and try and give us a bit of a buffer. But we are trying to get up to 300 members by the end of the year. Also trying to get to 100,000 subscribers. Got a couple of yesterday, which is always good to see. We are trying to push to get to 300 members by the end of the year. And we've basically worked out that if we can get about 1.6, call it 2 a day, from now until the end of the year, we will get there. I do expect a bit of a drop-off in December without Bok games, so we need to try and give ourselves a bit of a buffer. So I've actually basically said if we can get 3 per day for November, that should get us through to 300 by the end of the year. So if you are not a member, please do consider becoming a member. It is the pinned comment in the chat, and we are doing a lot more stuff for the members. For example, on Saturday, after our player rating show, we'll be moving into a members-only sort of question and answer session after the live stream, where all our members can really engage and ask their questions and debate their points in that dedicated live stream on the weekend. So Arnie Virgil, who became a member yesterday, saying knowing Rassie, he would pick Tony Brown at flower half. That's the thing, isn't it? We never know what's going on. Indomiso earlier saying Peter Steph the Toy and Evan will definitely be back. And I agree with that. So there, I think we've already got some of the changes that we're going to see. But in terms of this weekend, I mean, I think that what we've been quite clever with is that it's quite a mobile pack. It's Zachary Porthen is a young player, but he's quite a mobile titan. He's not, Vilko Low, who's just sheer power, massive individual and, set piece dominance. Even Thomas Toy, for example, he is quite a mobile Lucian, a bit more kind of in the mold of a almost a young Nedrick Vessels with regards to being quite good around the park. Not nearly the same, but he is a mobile prop. He can get around the park and a very exciting player. He's very physical. Loves the physicality part of it. Loves big tackles. Loves a big hit or two. Franco Mossad, obviously, we know he's got that engine. Arches Neyman, Loot de Jager. Loot de Jager, I've been very impressed with the mobility, actually, in this year when he comes back from Japan. I think he has been a player who's really worked hard on that fitness, and he looks like a very different player to maybe what he was 10 years ago. So it is quite a mobile pack. But I think he's also got the grunt we need. I mean, Loot de Jager is still going to pack a punch when he carries. Jasper Wiese is going to be very important with regards to getting over the advantage line consistently this weekend and hammering away at that Japanese defense. And then in the back line, it's pace on pace in that back three. Kirk Lawrence, Ethan Hooker, Cheslin Colby. It's three players who can really, really get to you in the air. I think they're all good players in the air. There's lots of pace. I mean, somebody the other day said, does Ethan Hooker have the pace for wing? Ethan Hooker is absolutely rapid. So, I mean, it would have been nice to have almost seen every front of Merv in 14, let the Scrum Cup Mafia cause havoc, but it is a back three with plenty of X factor. And I think Sasha himself as well, obviously, is becoming quite a threat in himself, not just the way he distributes. In fact, he's actually almost been criticized for a lack of distribution. But he's been so good at getting over the advantage line and creating gaps. Now everyone's sort of saying it's about finding that balance. When does he run? When does he distribute? And how does he find that balance in his play? Which is obviously part of growing. And I think that the coach should be working with him a lot with regards to understanding when to take that gap, understanding when to look for the offload, and when do you look at, for example, cross kicks and the likes of that, chips over the top. But he's such an exciting player who can just create something out of nothing that you don't want to impede him. You don't want to hamper him. You want to let him play. You want to let him do what comes naturally to him, because that's when we do see the best version of Stash Famigomazulu. He's a very different player to Moy Liebach, whose first thought whenever he gets the ball is, how do I put somebody in space? How do I create space? Even if it means, for example, I'm going to go short, that's created long, and he's got the ability to throw that long pass. I think Andre Pollard's immediate reactions when he sort of gets the ball is often, how do I create a contest? Is it a case of trying to get this out wide, or trying to get this to really create space? Is it a case of going to the boot, for example? But I think he very much looks at it as how do we create opportunities through contestables or contact. Moy Liebach looks for space. He looks for gaps. He looks to put people in gaps. Sasha, I think, looks at almost game life advantage. Whether it's, can I get this to the wing with a kick pass, or can I myself take it in and create a half gap, create those line breaks, for example. So I personally think that they all see the game quite differently, despite playing in the same position. And that's what I think is so exciting and so much fun with our fly halves, is that we've got three world-class fly halves. Well, two world-class fly halves, and I say Sasha's one in the making. I'm happy to call Moy Liebach world-class, because on a day he really is. But they're so different in the way they play, the way they see the game. And that's what makes the box so unpredictable at the moment, is that they've got so many different options that they can, with one substitution, just completely flick the way that they play. And it becomes quite a difficult team to prepare for, which is a really, really good thing. And long may that continue, really. In terms of players, and this was another thing, in terms of players who I think are very common under pressure, I think you need big games this weekend. From Loot de Jager, I think he's been quite good this year, but needs to continue reaffirming that he's at this level, given the fact that there's been a conversation about lack of locks. I think that Franco Mossad is probably the big player under the microscope this weekend. Hasn't played a lot of rugby this year. Lots of chatter about his age, for example, and is he going to make it to the next World Cup? So I think if he has a strong game on Saturday, that just sort of quietens down the doubters and quietens down any sort of conversations about him not being able to get to the next World Cup. So I think he will be under the microscope, but I think he'll need a big game to keep himself in and around that mix. In the back line, I think Damien Delende and Jesse Creel, they've got under a lot of pressure from Andre Estes and Kane Moody. Jesse Creel, maybe in particular, hasn't probably had the sort of the year he had last year and the year before. And he's under a lot of pressure from Kane Moody, who's been very good in the number 13 channel. So I think those two as a combination are under threat, which is so cool when you think that is our most experienced and arguably our best ever center pairing. And yet they're being put under threat, and they need to know that they have to step up, because they've got likes of Andre Estes and Kane Moody as a combination, even Damien Willemse starting, potentially starting in that 12 as options. And I love the fact that they did look at Damien Willemse as a 12, and look how good he was, man of the match performance. So I think those two players are also under a little bit of pressure, just to keep reminding people that, they are still as good of options as the rest, and try and almost sort of show people that they are the better option. So it's a very healthy position to be in, I think. And then in terms of, other players, Chesson Colby obviously got an opportunity to stay claim the number 15 jersey. And then a lot of attention will be on Andre Esterhuizen. Can he perform as a flank? Can he be named in the team as a reserve flank and fill that role and provide the impact that you would have seen if you had gone with Ben Jason Dixon, if you had gone with Mark Van Staden, if he was around, if you'd gone with a Vincent Tuka? Can he perform a role off the bench to that standard? Because obviously that means that for example, yes, picking a Ben Jason Dixon as a flank is better than picking Andre Esterhuizen, but obviously Andre Esterhuizen is a much better center than a Ben Jason Dixon would be. So now you're looking at saying, cool, we can basically, inverted commas, deploy a 6-2 split, but if things go wrong, we've got our center option. So it's a 5-3, but it's a 6-2. And it becomes quite complicated with the way that it gets deployed. And I think that the big thing that we're trying to find out is this whole idea of hybrid players. Just what sort of limit can we push it to? Because we have seen a traditional 5-3 split more often than not from the box this year. In fact, I think it's been the most preferred split. We have seen a significant move away from the 6-2. However, we are seeing different types of 5-3s. And I think that the concept of a 5-3, 6-2, we're now seeing 5.5, 6.5. 6.5 split, which is, I think we kind of what this weekend is. We got that half player in Andre Esterhuizen and potentially other hybrid players. You look at Mark Van Staden, who's been named as a hooker replacement, but has come on and basically done the role of a flag, and you could push your hooker for 80 minutes. We saw that during the World Cup with Bongi and Manambi. So, bench innovation is far from new from the box, but this is, I think, a very big acid test as to whether this concept can work. And it's not just about whether